It seems Nigeria's oil and gas sector will end the year on a high as the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited announces the resumption of operation of the Warri refinery at 60% capacity.
And that's the minimum that experts say is the best way to be. I guess it's a good day to turn our eyes to the energy sector. What do you think? So we say welcome to day 2 of Channels Television's review of year 2024. I'm Ayo Makin, and of course with me is
Ini John Mekwa. That's who I am. Well, it does look like 2024 will be remembered as the year when we saw resumption of operations in our refineries. There was Port Harcourt Refinery, and now we're celebrating Warri Refinery. And there was Dangote from the private side. Dangote also started the export of petroleum motor spirit, that's petrol. And then there's also the crude for Naira, which Dangote has attributed to the drop in the price of petrol. And this element of competition has caught up in that sector. So we see even a drop in the price of petrol in other retail stations. I don't know if you thought we would have this story in December 2024, where there's a drop in the price of petrol.
I guess we can say that rule is being broken in Nigeria. What goes up
is
now coming down.
Oh, it's coming down.
While Nigerians are happy in it, guess who would be the happiest person today? Of course, the group CEO of the NNPCL, Mr. Mele Kyari. How do I know? Well, you see for yourself.
This plant is running. We have not completed 100%. We are streaming the other part of the plant as we progress. So currently, this plant is running, and we'll see what is happening, and we'll bring it forward into the market. There are many people who don't think this is real. As you all know, a lot of media talk all over the place that people don't believe real things can happen in our country. We believe that this is pride for our country, and that all of us have a stake, including media people, on this, so that this country becomes a greater place, and it is already happening. I just want you to know that everything you see is real.
So, well, you've seen that. And right now, of course, you can just imagine that there's at least, we talked about Olu earlier being...
he was there today.
He was there
traveler.
Today.
He was at Warri Refinery. In fact, he brought in those visuals.
Yeah.
And now he's right here in the studio. Talk about first-hand experience.
Olu, how was it for you?
I traveled and I came back.
Well, congratulations.
I traveled and I came back. I mean, that's what we need to do. We've just done what we need to do, what we signed up to do.
I mean, for years we've been talking about failed attempts to bring back any of the refineries, and now the second one.
I think what has changed, speaking very succinctly, is the strategy as to how this whole thing, because I heard comments like, how come suddenly all the refineries seem to be turning up and the flames coming up on the flare stack and all of that? Well, the truth is, first of all, you need to ask yourself questions around the turnaround maintenance that we did in the past. What happened? So it was a case. Okay, so let me rephrase it this way. We can only attribute most of all of these things to the successful passing of the Petroleum Industry Bill into an act and becoming a law today. So most of the things you see happening today are a function or derivative from that bill or from that law right now that is being practiced, which was signed.
But Olu, you know, some people would say it's the elements of competition. We did not see the Port Harcourt refinery come to life until Dangote. We did not see the reduction in the price of petrol until Dangote did it. So one would say the consumers are just enjoying
the competition.
The competition element in the oil and gas sector.
Nigeria is a very interesting place, and lately I was having a conversation with someone. I said the truth is that Nigerians like to be interested in everything that concerns their life, and they should be. They should be
yeah.
As a matter of right. But sometimes it shoots to the point where people ask questions that are not particularly in tandem with how things work generally. So the truth is, a refinery does not just work because there's competition. It works because it's been switched on. It works because if there was something wrong, that thing has been fixed. It's working because if it was bad, it is now being repaired. So it meant that the processes were on when you didn't know.
All right, so you know what? Let's not put. I mean, we
I would have loved to actually.
No, but he is our colleague. Let's not put him on the hot spot.
How do you know he's not going to be one of them, or he's not already?
Well, he's not yet.
Not yet.
But Olu, so what we would like for you to tell us is you were there in the Warri refinery today. You were there in Port Harcourt refinery. I guess the hottest one now is Warri refinery. Tell us what you saw, what's going on. Are we going to have some controversy? Remember what happened with the Port Harcourt? Oh, they're not refining, they're just cracking.
Let me give you an example. I know where you're going. Let me give you an example. There's a refinery in Saudi Arabia, for instance.
Sorry, Olu. Just tell us what you saw at the Warri refinery. What's happening there? What information did you gather? What can we get? Are we getting 50 trucks of petrol there daily? You know, what are we expecting from that refinery?
Okay, let me address it from the point of view of let's not have the controversy that said is to associated with the Port Harcourt refinery. To say that, for instance, there's a refinery in Saudi Arabia that started 1 year ago. Up till now, it is still stabilizing. These are machines, these are machineries, these are instrumentations. These are things that go with a lot of computerization. Now, Warri today, what we have seen, it's a 125,000 capacity refinery, barrels per day refinery in Warri, in Delta State. What we've seen today is part of it coming on stream. And that part that comes on stream is the Area 1. That Area 1 currently, as we speak, by way of evidence, is producing naphtha, producing AGO, low profile oil. If you know how refinery technology works, naphtha is your base element that you need to produce the PMS. Now, 60% is what is working right now of that refinery. If you take 60% over 125, that will give you 75,000 barrels. What that means is that you have 15,000 barrels ahead of the Port Harcourt refinery. So if you put that together, you have over 130.
That's at the time it took off.
Yes. So Warri took off today officially. Doesn't mean the test run has not been on, but it took off officially today. And in the couple of weeks to come, from what we can see and the interviews I had with some of the engineers and some of the NNPC officials on the sideline, they're ramping up the remaining 40% to bring back the one. Don't you forget, in 2021.
The question
we do have a panel
is, do you see what you saw on ground? Is there a chance that we'll start getting petrol to X number of barrels per day?
I mean, that's
kerosene,
what Nigerians
X number of barrels per day, diesel, X number of barrels per day.
So I know that when you were rushing into the studio to start this program, you didn't have the benefit of seeing some of the pictures that we brought from Port Harcourt refinery. So we saw trucks being loaded.
From Warri, you mean?
Yes, from Warri. Sorry, apologies. Warri being loaded. We've seen the sample of the kerosene being produced. We've seen the sample of naphtha. We've seen the sample of AGO. And practically, when you see these products, you know them. And I wasn't given those pictures. I shot those pictures myself. Days like this, I want to shoot myself, like we did in 2021. So like I was trying to say in quick seconds, in 2021, Channels TV exclusively went to all the refineries and reported the state of those refineries to say that they were all grounded and they've been shut down. Now, that was at the point when the rehabilitation process started with the $1 billion that was voted for those refineries, as $1.5 billion, for instance, for Port Harcourt, which, of course, didn't really necessarily have federal government funding on it. It had banks and private entities putting their equity in it.
Foreign and domestic, or just domestic?
Foreign and domestic. So that's the part a lot of people didn't. So there's no appropriation that was made on those refineries like you had in the past. So in the past, you come from Port Harcourt refineries or Kaduna or Warri, take your budget to the National Assembly, and you say you need $100 million, and they give you 50 and all of that. But now the money is there, the lenders are there, the operators are there. Who, for instance, in Warri, and Technomart in Port Harcourt, and the guys doing Kaduna are
Long and
all
short,
OEMs.
It has taken off, and then it's evolving. I told you he's already one of them.
Yeah, I believe you. Olu's already one of them. I don't trust him anymore.
Others.
So let's get our panelists.
Well, what do you want to see before
No, hold your horse.
Do you want a sample of those products? I got the sample.
Back to you.
I got a sample of those products.
We do have a panel that will join this.
Let's be happy we have this.
Don't be in a hurry. Look, let's take a short break.
Yes. When we come back,
Olu
we'll have
is ready
our
to go on all
panelists.
salvos, especially because
I think we should treat Olu as a guest, not as a colleague.
I told you.
Let's take a break. We'll be back.
As Nigeria joins the conversation around climate change, around energy transition, Nigeria has sought to tell the global community that it will, as a matter of choice and decision, transit into cleaner energy sources of use, using its abundance of gas resources. And one of such is the compressed natural gas, as I said, for fuel of choice. That initiative is fast becoming a trend or some sort moving into the direction of a revolution. But there are concerns. When President Bola Tinubu announced a policy direction in favor of alternative fuel source, in this case, compressed natural gas, CNG, as a fuel of choice, it appeared like a diversion from the harrowing experience of subsidy removal at the inaugural broadcast.
The first subsidy is gone.
Since then, how has things fared? So far, there's been 2 incidences that tend to dip the processes, one at Ogun State and the other in Benin City. Unfettered, however, the superintendents of this industry have these assurances.
As a regulator, we have very stringent processes for that. Within hours or minutes of any incident, there is a report of it. An interim preliminary investigation is done to find out what the causes are and those that are involved, the scope, what mitigation plan needs to be taken. In some instances, the facility may be sealed to allow for such extensive investigation. I have received the preliminary report for the incident you referred to, and again, the causes have been highlighted, but we are waiting the final reports.
You can see it's extremely heavy, and even from observation, you can see this tank is quite different from most gas-bearing tanks you may have been familiar with. So this is bulletproof, it's burst-proof. You know, it's manufactured to very, very high precision. In fact, the burst pressure is 400 bar. CNG is safe, it's environmentally friendly, and it is also cheaper than the alternative white variants. If you go to the chemistry and science of LPG, CNG, PMS, and the rest, you will see that CNG is the least, combustible among all of them.
What is a CNG policy program direction without the practicals? So we made a stop right there at the nation's capital.
Typical conversion can come with the following. 1, pressure regulator. So pressure regulator, pressure gauge. The pressure gauge gives you a physical reading of the pressure you have in the cylinder, and also has an electronic sensor embedded in it to transmit the level of gas to the driver to know what is having left in the cylinder. So with this, there's a sensor on it that transmits the pressure.
Just like fuel gauge.
Just like fuel gauge. But a typical kit will also have the gas injectors. Just like you have it, the petrol injector. If you look at this now, there are 4 injectors here, corresponding to the number of engine that you have. So that you have 4 plugs here. Yeah. Now, a typical combustion kit will also have an electronic control unit. The ECU is able to simulate the electrical signals of the petrol system. All right, takes that signal, copies it, and uses to inject the right amount of CNG into it. Do you understand? So what happens is that for a given engine condition, the petrol required is about 2 mil. All right, the ECU interprets it, all right, and give the corresponding
intelligence system.
And
just like the gearing,
the system of this kit,
and give the corresponding amount of CNG at that particular engine condition.
They have finished the conversion. We have to do the safety review to be sure that what is to be there is where it's supposed to be, and the conversion kit used are of good quality, and all the component parts, everything was well fixed, and we are good to go. That is why it is very important to get every conversion center certified to be sure that we have the right tools there to carry out the conversion effectively.
Despite the mixed bag, there are some proud converts.
Brilliant.
Wow. Wow. How much CNG do you want to buy in terms of naira?
In terms of naira, I'm using 15 kg actually.
Yeah.
So if I thought the pressure is okay, I can get 15 kg. That is 3,500.
That's all.
Yes.
So if you buy now, how long will it take you?
150 kilometers.
Commercial or private use?
Commercial.
Why? Oh, you're done.
That was study.
But with a meager 30,000 conversion done so far and 1 million targeted conversion, how ready is Nigeria to transit to low emission sources of fuel? Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
That's Olu Philip right there. Another effort by the federal government in the area of energy. And Ayo, we had a whole lot of talks about CNG adoption, conversion price, and all of that. And once again, we have Olu in the thick of things.
You know, I was going to just take him up before you bring in the guests. Olu, it's 2024. When we talk about energy in the country, we're not really sure. Many people are not sure of what to talk about. Most people just look at fuel, petrol, generally electricity. Do you think, generally energy, how would you, from reporting the various energy sectors, think we have fared?
I know you must have heard a lot of people or experts say that we are resource rich, but energy poor. What that means is that I should have a choice between using PMS or a CNG, for instance, or an electric vehicle.
Or solar.
The choice should just be limitless to the point where, for instance, if I live in the north or in the northwest or northeast,
you can choose
my
windmill.
choice should naturally be should be renewable energy, as it were, right? So basically, you see us oscillating between today it is PMS. Everybody needs PMS for electricity. You need it for your car. You need it to run this organization. You need it to run the organizations that are not on national grid. You need it in your home, in small businesses, in large businesses.
Well, we're still drunk.
Yes, at other times, people want to use gas to fire their plants.
Okay.
How many people can afford the original plant that is fired by gas to now begin to fire their business?
I told you that if you leave Olu, he will be the only guest.
I think we just bring in our guest, even though there's the other part of this conversation was the energy. This year, we call it electricity. It was challenges upon challenges, I guess. Grid collapse.
12 times.
12 or 13.
12, 13.
Lately, I've seen about
12 times
13.
at least recorded for the year 2024.
Yes.
12 times. It went down.
Of course. And then there was also the band A thing. The band A thing also.
Did you understand what that was?
Well, I guess I'll understand tonight. Let's bring in our guest. We have Professor Yemi Oke. Professor Yemi Oke is Professor of Energy at the University. He's also a lawyer. Joins us from London at the University of Lagos. And right here in the studio, we have Jide Pratt. Jide Pratt is the Chief Operating Officer of IRENA, as well as the Country Director of Trade Grid. You're welcome. Also joining us virtually from our Abuja studio, we have Professor Emeritus in Petroleum Economics, Executive Director, Emmanuel Egboga Foundation in Abuja, Professor Wumi Iledare from our Abuja studio. And then also we have Thank God Egbe, the Chief Executive Officer of Cypher Crescent Limited. So it's a full house, but I guess we can cheat and start with Jide Pratt.
Oh, certainly, because he's right here with us.
So share with us, you are a stakeholder in the sector. You see a lot of things. I want to believe you're on the private sector side and all of that. From your perspective, how have we fared? Talking about energy accessibility, energy affordability, even with our energy resource rich, country that we can describe Nigeria as.
Thanks for talking to me. So let's put it this way. In a basket, you have good, you have bad, and you have ugly. So let's start with the good. How have we fared? You just talked about the report alluded on Warri Refinery. Now, whether it's 100% is not the question. The question is that it's back up after not being up for quite a while. So that's a plus. That's on the good side. You look at Port Harcourt Refinery, and we had so many different conversations in terms of, is it up? Is it giving us petrol or what you call straight cut naphtha? But regardless, naphtha is a process to petrol. That said. So it means that we have two national refineries sort of coming back on stream. We have the game changer, which is the Dangote Refinery. It's the largest single-train refinery in the world. So that's 650,000 barrel capacity. That's a good. It has triggered, and I believe I heard Ini asking something, why wait for NNPC? But you see, in everything, there's a cause and effect. I believe the Dangote Refinery, when we come to refining, takes Nigeria from a net importer to a net exporter. That's a fact. So that's a positive. You mentioned something about CNG. If we look at CNG, Nigeria sits on 207 trillion scoop of gas. What that means is that we have more gas than we have oil. That's a positive. Okay. The Executive Order 40, which the President signed some time back, became the trigger to start some of these things alongside the Petroleum Industries Act. Okay. So we have some movement, we have some motion. It's not yet Uhuru, but also look at the upstream. And we all know that the Seplat transaction, Renaissance, Shell, these all got to what you call government approvals. So they're positives. That's how I would start it. The bad side is that it took us so long. Why did it take us so long? Red tape, bureaucracy, politics. But we're past that now. So for me, what was the ugly part, or what is the ugly part? We still struggle in the oil and gas sector with data. You go to the NMDPRA website now, it's probably a year back. So we need data that is tangible. We need more gas commercialization as a country. In a nutshell, I would say we haven't fared as badly as we thought we would, but there's so much room up ahead. Those would be my opening comments.
Well, Professor, okay, I'll bring this to you now. You've talked about this for as long as I can remember. So the question that I want to ask you, and also taking from some of the issues that Ini and my colleague Olu have raised here, now it is good news, and it's part of the way Ini started, is that it seems we as a nation are ending the year on a high and literally firing the new year anew. But if you would take a general assessment of the entire energy space, which one have we ticked the box highest? Which one did we have the greatest opportunity and we failed to take it? And which one gives us the most opportunities in the year ahead?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Important question. I think we lost a lot of vital opportunities years back because PIA took us so long before it could materialize. Then the reform in the electricity sector also took us a while because the reform we had was not the kind of the reform we intended. But now, we just started taking the right steps. And Olu will confirm, I was also in Port Harcourt with Tolu and the other team. I wanted to see things myself. I wanted to see the refinery in Port Harcourt work and disabuse our minds of those doubts. And we were all convinced we saw things for ourselves. So let me take you down the memory lane. If you had PIA years back, and we've been able to implement PIA the way we're implementing it, this is not where we're going to be. Now, Nigeria is now moving forward. We've had good stories to tell about the Port Harcourt refineries. Now we've added Warri. Dangote is on stream, working. We're upping our production capacity in terms of crude. Now moving from 1.5 to 2, we are still moving. We've secured fresh and new markets. We've seen gradual fall in the pump price of premium motor spirit. And we're now witnessing a kind of revolution in the CNG arena, which we've been advocating. Coming to the power sector, we lost ground because right there in your studios, as far back as 2013, we've been telling them the kind of law we had was not the one to operationalize the sector. But it took us several years. We had a new law, and we just started implementing. We predicted Lagos State was going to have its own Lagos State Electricity Regulatory Commission. Lagos State is there now. A number of other states are there. Things are happening at the level of the federal government and state. And the next revolution in the power sector will be that we will advocate the federal government may now start to gradually receive itself of the funding liabilities in the power sector, because Nigerians can now ask their state governors what is happening in the power sector, because if you don't have electricity in Gombe, for instance, it's the problem of the governor of Gombe. If you don't have in Kaduna, it's the problem of Kaduna. So if they have electricity in Bayelsa, the people of Rivers will ask questions from their governor. That's the next journey, the next regime we're going to go in terms of energy efficiency and affordability. We've seen competitiveness even in the petroleum sector, which is now driving petroleum price, pump price of petrol premium motor spirit down south. And that's going to continue. We've seen the coming on board of the BUAS and other refineries with scaling up production capacity. Naturally, it's a question of demand and supply. Once supply outstrips demand, prices will go south. Once
Well, Prof, my apologies for butting in. What's going on in the petroleum sector, no one can argue with. And we can have all kinds of discussions on whether or not it was the PIA that actually spiked things, or it was the Executive Order 40 that Mr. Pratt talked about here. But looking at the other energy sources in the country, there are those who will wonder. I mean, Mr. Pratt just told us how much potential we have in the area of gas. And we've been talking about this gas, whatever, for as far back as 2020, 2021, to the best of my knowledge. Then I remember, I think it's in Katsina State, some windmill that was supposed to be active has been moribund for as long as one can remember. So we have quite a number of opportunities in the energy sector that we shouldn't be talking just about petroleum or petroleum products. Isn't that so?
I agree with you. I'm totally with you on that. That was why I said years back, I'm not talking of 10 years now. I'm not talking of 10 years. I'm talking of something close to 20 years. They are all documented. We said we needed to go via decentralized energy options. is documented, written, published, and we put up the ideas there as to what are the components of decentralized energy option. That's where we are now going as a country, at every level. Now, instead of waiting for grid supplies, we can go off grid, we can go see a lot of alternatives. That's not happening. You talk of gas, there's a bit of a problem with gas. I said in your studios and others, gas remains an internationalized commodity. It is highly competitive because it is bought and sold in the international market. The regime we had was the one that expected gas producers to produce gas, and under the guise of domestic gas obligation, which was also written into the Petroleum Industry Act. You are saying the gas producers should produce gas and be patriotic in quote to Nigeria and sell for purposes of power generation. That was a problem because there was no encouragement for gas producers to produce gas. Nobody will produce gas at a loss because it's a competitive product that buyers are waiting for it offshore. So they weren't able to comply with that domestic gas obligation. They will not told government start to do appropriate pricing of your gas so that they can give for domestic use. Otherwise, nobody's going to give gas to the power sector. The federal government now stepped in through MBED. MBED was supposed to be a stopgap arrangement, an interim arrangement that will guarantee supplies of gas, meaning just produce your gas. Whatever is produced is bought and sold to the federal government as a bulk buyer. They will not give it to the DisCos. DisCos will distribute. DisCos got those gas. They weren't remitting appropriately. They were under remitting. They said they had a lot of course, I don't want to go into all the kind of losses because Nigerians are listening. They're not interested in the technical languages of the losses in the power sector. But the DisCos were not able to remit appropriately. So the federal government was now forced to bridge the gap, pay for gas given to the DisCos. MBED was in huge debt to gas manufacturers, and the sector was no longer looking. Those were the challenges. And we said, okay, federal government can no longer...
My apologies. I'm not asking you a question, but I'm just wondering. I mean, it goes back to something that Mr. Pratt said the other time, when he was saying that we don't have enough data. How in the universe do you intervene in a private business? I mean, you give money to a private business so that the private business that decided that, okay, no, we're buying this thing, asset and liabilities, and then you're not still giving. Maybe I don't understand it.
So I had a problem with that.
I was going to ask Prof because he's actually my lecturer. He lectured me at some point. And
you guys can have your family meeting.
Yes, I was going to ask him. I mean, we've always had this argument that. And I'm going to put that back to him before I come to Professor Elebari to ask, I mean, are we not going to find ourselves in the same argument of the call for state police as against a federalized police with the decentralization of power to the states? Because in there, states are allowed to generate, transmit, distribute, and collect tariffs. They will have their own regulatory commissions.
Yep.
So are we setting up the entire nation again for a new rethinking and a new way of doing business because the states have to learn? And that's one. Two, a situation where the states don't have, we don't have an electricity market. How do we proceed? Prof, that's for you. But let me come quickly to Professor Elebari and ask, sir, I know we've had conversations also so much in the past about Nigeria's electricity market and all of that. Do you see a situation where the federal government at some point attempted to decentralize the transmission company of Nigeria and sell it out, and it did do that and bring it back onto its stake? Is that a situation we need to be over and done with for us to achieve some of the targets we set for ourselves? For instance, the 25,000 megawatts target of 2025 signed some 3-4 years ago by G2G, Nigerian and German government. Where are we on that?
I can identify with your fear and I have that fear myself with the decentralization. But I applaud that first step. We have centralized too many things in Nigeria, which has delimited the ability of Nigeria as a nation to attain its potential. And this is where I call for public education. Because you can see what's going on with the debate on tax reform bill. People should not be afraid of decentralization. We were there before, and regions were competitive and developed. Even when we were 12 states, we competed against each other. And what is good in one state is copied in another. We have stayed in the path of of centralization too much. And centralized planning cannot work without dictatorial, authoritarian. But we don't have one. So we need to work on that. I'm afraid, and I think the states are working well, they're not going to be creating a NEPA equivalent. That's what we can hope for. There must be sustainability of whatever they do. Where it becomes impossible for one state to do things right, we need to begin to cooperate. But this is where governance comes in. This is where a transformational leadership mindset comes in. This is where a teamwork comes in. What we want to do going forward, we cannot get there with transactionalism. And we can understand this. We have different levels of government. Each of them has a role to play. The energy sector is critical for sustainable economic development. For every 1 million person, you need 1 gigawatt, which is more or less 1,000 megawatts of electricity. We don't have it. We can't develop without that. Centralization is not the way to go. We have started going in the right direction. We must try to sustain it. This is where governance is key. This is where policy institutions must be intellectual in their reasoning. We don't have that. We don't have that. We need to go and build our intellectual community in the energy sector if we want to add value. Let me give others opportunity to comment.
All right, thank you, Prof. So let me come to Mr. Egbe. Mr. Egbe, so we are talking about whether it's electricity or it's CNG, the abundance of resources. So even when we're talking about electricity, it shouldn't just be from gas. I did speak to a manufacturer recently, and he told me they pay about $8 for a unit of gas, which is about $2 outside the country. Now, we celebrate the resumption of operations of the refineries, but can we have a basket of resources, whether it's through the new electricity bill for the state or whether it's federal? How do we, Mr. Egbe, how do we ensure that even in the minds of Nigerians, adoption is another thing. How do we spread our wings to adopt other sources and not just petrol? We have solar, we have wind, and we have gas and all of that.
Okay, thank you, Ini, and thank you, Channels, for inviting me to speak about this. And I'll just start from where Professor Iledare stopped about data, about intellectuals, about leveraging technology. For now, we are predominantly using gas to generate power. The sources we have is oil and gas, but there's solar, there's hydro. First of all, do we have the technology? We need to invest in the technology that we need at the universities. By the time we start importing all of this to actually drive it, then we'll struggle with that. So the first thing we need to look at is basically leverage technology, leverage data to develop capacity in country that will help us actually develop solar, develop hydro, And then, of course, even the gas we are looking at, we have a lot of gas around, and then how we are really leveraging that, how much gas is being fled to manage that. So the key, first of all, is basically to believe that we have to empower our system that leverages the whole triple helix model, the industry, the academia, the government collaborating together to actually drive innovation that will help us actually spread the use of different sources of energy to drive that. And so basically, I would say, let's see how we can actually invest in technology to drive that. So we don't depend so much on oil, depend so much on gas to power our system.
All right. I was going to ask you, Mr. Tangod, do you see a situation? Do you see a situation where we seem to be all dressed up with nowhere to go? I mean, we seem to know that we need to leverage technology. We seem to know that the academia must come on board. We seem to agree with Professor Iledare as regards intellectual capacity being brought together. But it appears that all of these are happening in silos. Do you see that as the challenge here?
Yes, they're actually happening in silo, and it's quite acknowledged, and lots of efforts are being done to actually make the stakeholders to collaborate. There's actually 2 months ago, there's actually a conference held in Abuja, the first of its kind in the country, where you have stakeholders from government, stakeholders from industry, and from academia coming together under the auspices of Triple Helix organization to work together to drive innovation. And the sense is to break away from that silo, break away from that industry dominating in research and then academia actually doing for publication. So it's basically what we need to see how the whole stakeholders put up a platform, what Triple Helix is actually doing. We're working with stakeholders, happy to work with the Triple organization to drive that. So once we get those working and get stakeholders in these sectors coming together deliberately, collaborate, co-create solutions to drive this. We're not only solving problems today, we're also solving problems for a long term. For Triple Helix, we actually have a vision 10-10-10-10, talking about in the next 10 years, can we have 10 research institutions, 10 academic institutions that have 10% equity in 10 listed companies that will drive innovation, that will drive changes in the country the next 10 years. So if we have that, this can be done only through collaboration. And that's basically what we need as a country to break down that silo where research is done for publication.
Sorry to jump in. I agree with you very, very well and so much so. But if I'm just someone who doesn't understand some of this process, let me just ask you, typical Nigerian, who should I hold responsible if we're not harnessing our different sources of energy? Who should I hold responsible if I can't choose to be off-grid, if I choose to be on-grid or partially on-grid and off-grid? Who can I hold responsible if I can buy petroleum products at the right price? And who can I hold responsible if I can turn on the switch and have it come on? That's the kind of silos I'm discussing.
It's actually, if you look at the sector, to drive changes in the economy, you need these 3 sectors to work. You have the academia to work. You also have the industry. You also have the government working. It's like a chicken and egg question. Which one comes first? First of all, we need our research institution, we need the academia to actually develop innovative products that will be able to drive changes in the industry. We also need the industry to actually bring in these challenges that they have to the academia, to research institutions for it to be solved. We also need government to formulate policies that actually need to drive innovation, to drive operationalization of this research, to fund most of this stuff. So people move from Triple Helix and move into pentahelix. Do we have the funding? Do we have the entrepreneurs to empower that? So it's basically holding one person responsible. It wouldn't be fair because it's like a network system that's actually work together to look at who is going to work together. Everybody co-create, comes together to co-create this. You have the government, the responsibility to develop policies, to bring funding. You also have the academia, responsibility to actually develop solutions and research on that. Of course, industry will analyze this and then send those problems down to university. So we create that. So the problem is basically a multi-sectoral problem, and it also starts with that what Professor Lemon said, the intellectual capacity that we have to provide that. We have oil and gas production in the country. We really know how much we have. We are producing. Yes, we have a couple of issues around, but data. We have that data. We have that technology. We have a couple of countries where all the amount of oil produced, gas produced is actually recorded. You can actually stream from somewhere, you get all that. So that's basically some of the solutions that can emanate from the universities, that can emanate from research centers. I know a couple of oil and gas companies that are actually institutional research, which is really very commendable. What's happening around. So if we drive this and get this done, I'm sure that we'll be able to drive innovation that will lead to changes, especially in the oil and gas sector that has the highest amount of investment.
Mr. Thangod, we get you quite clearly. We'll just allow my colleague here, Mr. Ayo, come in. I was almost going to say that there's a colleague of mine who just said, you know what, tell them we need light. I don't know how we're going to communicate this.
And that's all we want to hear.
We need light.
We need more than that.
Who is going to make
there was a question
special provision for vandals?
There's a question.
Who vandalize this infrastructure?
Well, maybe that is part of the conversation now.
Somebody's vandalizing this infrastructure.
Let's begin to look forward to the year 2025. I mean, the basis of review is to do better going forward. And one of the things that we think we can all record, as has been scored, is that states now have the opportunity to produce and distribute their own electricity and maintain their own infrastructure and regulate their own sector.
And get revenue from it.
So that's the question now, Mr. Pratt. So the law permits. I don't know if all 36 states can do it.
Yes.
Professor Naji, I asked him one of the days we interviewed him, I mean, having done, geometric electricity in Abia State, I asked him, how long does it take to come up with a power station for generating electricity? He said it shouldn't take more than 3 years and maybe $20 million or something like that. Now, being that short a time and that finite, quote unquote, quantum of resources, what are the potholes, the minefields that the states, any state that wants to get into it, needs to be aware of and avoid, so that they can avoid the problems that Olu has forecasted earlier?
Thank you, Ayo. So let's start from the beginning. When you have a problem, you iterate. So it starts by saying that I have 4 problems. I've solved 2. In solving 4, the 2 that are solved, 1 has an issue. So it means that I have to rework it. Now let's use Lagos State. And I keep on saying, in the country of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Lagos is that one-eyed man. Probity is a different conversation. But in terms of resources and passing a bill, she's gone steps ahead of everybody. So what are the what are the potholes she's likely to face? There is a fix, or shall I say, there's a cross between being capitalist and being socialist. That is the Nigerian conundrum. We're 200 million people, but we don't have 200 million people that are, and I don't want to use gainfully employed, I want to use the word productive. Some by choice, some by chance. So you find out when you go into the political landscape in Nigeria, you become able to do so much more. But at the same time, they wear what you call a political hat. I think that is the first issue they need to step away from. Competence is what is needed. So it means that if you have the best mind,
electricity regulation.
So that's where, and we're going in stages. If you set up this regulatory companies, competence from the legal framework, what is doable, what is right to do, and what is wrong to do. Then commercial viability. If Lagos says, for instance, let's just use an abstract example, she needs 2,000 megawatts of electricity. How much of it is commercially viable? Because there are areas that can't afford to pay, but you need to give light. So the question is that if she looks at that, then it's a mix of industry, residential, and let's say those who cannot pay. So you're trying to find a tariff model where you sell most of what you can to the places that are commercially viable, the industries. So they stop using generators. If they don't need to buy diesel and they have an IPP, an independent power project that is running them, they're paying their kilowatt hours, but they don't need to take out money to buy diesel or go and build a renewable solar energy plant. They don't need to do that. So Lagos must find what is viable. Give it to the best hands. And it's not a political game. Every time you take money as an investment, it is going to chase, capital will always chase returns. That's a standard. So the first thing is the legal frameworks have to be correct. The second thing is that there needs to be commercial viability. And what is most important, in my opinion, is that there must not be a case of where I give it to Mr. Ayo because we're from the same party. If INI is the most competent.
It goes back to competence that you're talking about.
If INI is the most competent, then that is what it is. She's going to be able to generate what we need.
Even if she's not even from Lagos State.
It doesn't matter where she's from.
Okay.
If we say we're
already talking about that separation is where I think the big deal is.
Okay.
Because who is going to be answerable to who? The state government will set up the same thing that is at the federal level, isn't it?
Yes.
And run it. And you're already suggesting a cross subsidy?
Well, not a cross subsidy, because what I'm saying is this, Olu. If we need 2,000 megawatts, we're going to price it in such a way that the return on investment covers the 2,000. But what we're saying is that the man who runs an industry pays a higher percentage, not a cross subsidy, because he's running an industrial area. Look at it for power. If everybody is at home at night, then you can charge a higher tariff at night than in the daytime when there's nobody. So not a cross subsidy, but a cross-tariff system that covers bankability.
And it's important to note that this is also, it also has incentives because the government is supposed to do this with the private sector.
Oh, yes.
And this is supposed to be business opportunities for entrepreneurs who we know have the capital, you know.
Do you think government will pull back completely and allow the private sector and what everybody's saying here let's to the point where the professionals will run it?
They should. They should. Whether they do is a different. But it goes back to what we say. If we have conversations, and I would say this, UpNEPA is a 50-year-old problem. So it means that we haven't solved it for 50 years.
Are you sure he's not older than that? Anyway, well, Professor,
I think I want to go to Professor Iledare. So we don't exhaust on just electricity now. The issue of crude production, we saw some improvements this year. We saw some improvement this year, Professor Iledare. I wonder if we know the Tatiana Olu has been following them. They've recorded some successes, and in our budget we have the 2 million barrel target. So are we on the right path to get this? We always talk about how it is human beings and those who are very knowledgeable in the area of oil and gas who are working in this issue of oil theft. It's not spirits, it's not ghosts. There are individuals who are knowledgeable in that sector. So would you say we're chasing shadows with all of this effort to curb oil theft? Or are we on the right path as we head into 2025? Can we comfortably hit the 2 million barrels, even though sometimes we see OPEC has one number, the NUPRC has another number?
Well, thank you again. I want to commend everybody quickly. I know you don't have a lot of time, but listen, the academia has the tool. The government needs the tool for policy making. The industry needs the tool for profitability analysis, catch up their investment. In the energy sector, if I'm going to educate the public, you cannot break even overnight. It's a long-run business. And I don't think the society understands that. I don't even think the government has an understanding of something. It's one thing to know something. It's another thing to understand it. I think we lack understanding of the oil, gas, and power sector, and that's why we're not succeeding. Now, quickly, 2 million barrels per day from a 37 billion barrel reserve is nothing. With that 37 billion barrels reserve, you can produce easily 4 million barrels per day. But you do not have the good governance. You are not governing the oil and gas industry in the way it should deliver. If you do that in 2025, I can bet by this time in 2025, with governance structure that is effective, efficient, ethical, and equitable, you produce 4 million.
Well, I think I would say, Prof, that we have already we seem to be taking that step, and sincerely apologize, Prof, for butting in because there are some issues we need to take up before we hit the hour. And let me just say comfortably that this is a beginning of conversations. I'm very sure Olu is going to be calling on you, and he is going to be calling on you, and be sure we're not going to let you be until we ensure that all the things that you are advising the nation, they are done. Professor Wunmi Iledare, Professor Emeritus in Petroleum Economics, thank you so much for your time. Professor Yemi Oke is also Professor of Energy, University of Lagos. Thank you so much. Mr. Tango Adegbe, CEO, Cypher Crescent Limited, as well as Mr. Jide Pratt, JP, COO, Iona, and
our own Olu Philip too.
I'm not even going to introduce him. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of this conversation. Well, thank you, Olu, for what you do. We'll be right back at the top of the hour for another conversation. Do stay with us.